family, much like tennis shoes, can be replaced. And welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Cartel.
That's not what you said last week when you talked about protecting your family at all costs.
That's because I've grown since then.
Maybe we're talking about extended family.
I went into a week of deep consideration. And
what kid did what wrong?
This is who I am now. I do have a black eye from my son, there's that. He hit me in the eye with a phone. Courtney,
your face is so small right now that I couldn't even tell.
I don't know how to feel about that. Yeah, so I think it was over the weekend. Yeah, it was over the weekend, last weekend. We had all just kind of woken up for the morning, and Courtney got up and left the room, and he doesn't like when she does that.
Okay.
You know, he's one. He's not a big fan of her leaving the room. And my phone was just sitting on the bed, and we were just, laying there hanging out. And he grabbed that phone and just, flung himself backwards, phone in hand, and got me right in the corner of the eye. And, that white flash when you get hit sometimes, got to see one of those. And I was like, well, that's going to leave a mark.
So here's my question
okay.
for the guy and everybody, because
I already know your question, and I know the answer. Yes, in a fight, I would beat him. No, I would defeat him easily.
That's not what my question was. It was close.
Okay.
Real close. Because we don't cut anything. So I get to ask, and you get to listen.
Sure.
Here at Jesus Cartel, we've been doing this for about 2 years now.
Now I'm nervous about what
Have you ever asked me a question that I didn't answer, or have I asked you one that you didn't answer? We've never pleaded the fifth. We always answer.
I feel like you have pleaded the fifth at some point, but I'd have to go back through the archives. But I'm pretty sure I recall vividly a plead the fifth moment where I tried to hem you up. Well, I can't at the moment, but I will if I need to.
So here's my question.
Here we go.
When Maddox hit you, he didn't mean to, apparently, but he did act out of character. I mean, we do need to talk to him about this, right? Mm-hmm. And because he flung himself, we're not, flungers or flingers or whatever you say.
That's definitely it.
When he did that.
Flungers, I believe, is the correct one.
But when he did that, did you have any reflex to do something to him back?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So when
I did swat him on the leg for flinging himself backwards, but
that wasn't a reflex.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with him hitting me.
So when we were when the girls were young, we lived on Lanier Drive, and I would lay on the couch and stuff, and they would run. I mean, because our house was like one big room, and so they would just run through the room, and then they would just hit me. And sometimes I wouldn't realize what was going on because I'd be watching ESPN or whatever, and then they hit me, and I would just out of reflexes sometimes I would swing back at them, and if they were still there, they got hit. If they ducked, then they didn't get hit, and I would never get up and go do something to them. But I just had bad reflexes.
Yeah,
they hurt me. I tried to hurt them, not on purpose.
Sure,
but it happened.
Sure, I have had that happen once before. Courtney would remember it because we were both kind of like,
right.
Yeah, we were on a trip somewhere, and she's 5 now. I think she was either 3 or 4 at the time, and she just ran up and kicked me hard out of nowhere. I think I was putting my shoes on, so I'm looking down at the ground, and I just swung my hand out when I got hit, and she was wearing some type of shoe. It wasn't soft. She kicked me hard. I mean, not hard enough to really injure me or anything like that, but enough for there to be a reflexive response. And she kicked me square in the kneecap. If she'd have kicked my shin, I wouldn't have even felt it. That does sound weird to some people. No, I'm not going to explain it. But she kicked me right in the kneecap. And so, I literally just swung out and swatted her. And I was afterwards, Courtney was looked at me, and I looked at her, and I was like, well, this has not gone the way that it needed to go,
Yes.
And that was a super awkward moment.
Last week you talked about, some faults and some different things like that, and that was probably one of my faults when the kids were younger, because we don't cuss and we don't fight, we don't yell, we don't do those things. We did spank and we do those things on purpose, and we don't do them when we're angry and stuff. But I did have bad reflexes at times, and that was something that I had to learn. It's something as a dad that I had to learn, and we made jokes out of it and stuff. And they knew as long as they ducked one time, whatever, they were good. Then he wasn't going to get mad and all that. Just had bad reflexes, and which sounds like an excuse, And so I had to get better at it, so that it wouldn't be an excuse and I wouldn't mess up. And everything. So I was just wondering, in an instance like that.
Yeah, that's the only time that it's happened to me. And I really couldn't tell you exactly what it was that caused it, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like it was on my mind or anything. I was tying my shoes. I guess just the suddenness of it.
Getting you off guard.
Yeah, the suddenness of it. Just like I just reacted, I didn't even know it was her, no idea what was there,
Well, we get used to reacting, like sometimes in the morning time when I'm walking around Fresh Start, as soon as I see somebody coming, I go ahead and decide to say good morning to them.
Sure.
Well, if I just said good morning to them on the other hall, then it's a little awkward, and so we have reactions, in ways that we react. I guess that was just one of the things I saw as a fault that I had to change and had to get better at,
Yeah, we can definitely both agree that was not a good thing,
right.
But yeah, no, that didn't happen. It didn't happen with Maddox. You're actually not the first person that asked me. Somebody was like, well, did you throw him? I was like, no. Yeah. No, I didn't throw him.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thrown him, but I would have picked him up to throw him.
Yeah.
And realized.
Yeah.
Usually,
I
if
can't
it was,
throw him.
Usually, Usually anything after like 1.5 seconds was cool, but that little window there.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, that's tough. Well, outside of child abuse, what's been going on?
Yeah. So now we're in the part of the baseball season where nothing is going on if you're not a coach and a player.
That's right.
So if you're a coach, hey, it's business as usual. If you're a player, business as usual. But if you are a fan, then it's over.
Yeah.
Our head coach called me last night and asked me if, because we hadn't had a game since Monday. Today's Thursday. We're filming this. He asked me if the next Friday, if I could play music for an inter-squad game because they couldn't find anybody to play them because we have a bye next week. So we had a bye this week, basically, except for Monday. We got a bye next week in the playoffs, and we don't play till May the 1st.
Yeah.
And so he's going to do an inter-squad game on, a week from tomorrow or whatever, April the 25th, and wanted to know if I could help with that.
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. And then after you play May the 1st, you don't play again for another week.
We have a scrimmage Tuesday against Claiborne, and so, same kind of situation. Just having rest is good. And the boys definitely need it after we had a 30-something game season. But too much rest is bad. If you lay off too long, you end up in a bind. You don't want to fall out of rhythm. But yeah, it is high time. We're going in as the 3 seed. What'd y'all end up?
4.
4?
I think that's right.
Good.
I think 4.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll be able to make a run. I will say of the playoff locations, of the top 4 in our classification, I will say that we ended up with the easiest path to the semis. Doesn't mean we'll make it, but we've definitely got the easiest path. Our first game should be a cakewalk. The second one should be mildly competitive, but not anything crazy. And the semis are going to be
the
stiff.
Quarters. What about the quarters?
So we only have because we also have a bye, and so so we only have 2 games before we get to the semis. But yeah, so it's should be good, and so. Yeah, the second round is the quarters for us. Is it not for y'all?
I guess that's right.
Because y'all have
really
a bye.
The third, but I guess that's right. I guess we play the Haynesville so-and-so winner and then Oakdale or somebody in the quarters. Yeah. Which, for us, that's a 4 versus 5 seed. So that could be, and we were just a 7 seed, a game ago. So, I mean.
Yeah, so ours will be 3 and 6. Yeah. And the 6 the 6th ranked team in our classification. They're decent. You can tell by their schedule they've won a couple of decent games, but they've not done anything overly impressive, so which tells me that they're solid, but they're not incredible. Doesn't mean we can't lose. It's baseball.
Yeah.
You know, weird things have happened. We lost to a team much worse than them earlier this year, and so we still got to, be on our game. But we definitely have the cleanest path in terms of just getting.
Well,
there.
who's kind of like the wild card team that, I say wild card, the one I'm thinking about in our division is the 2 seed, but still, who's the team that isn't always there, but they're good this year? Is there one like that?
It's hard to say because they changed the playoffs so much this year with the B and C schools. So all of the private and public schools are back together for the first time. So I'm not 100% sure who's not normally there. Now I know that Weston is the 2 seed, and Weston has an incredible offense. Very, very good team. We beat them earlier this year in an 8-inning game, 2-1, where Eli Cottingham pitched unbelievably. I'm not saying Eli's not capable of producing that game again.
Yeah.
But it was his best work.
Who's the 1 seed?
Pitkin.
Okay.
Their coach is J.C. Holt, who used to play for LSU, and his son is on that team. And so I would imagine that, if nothing else, he's pretty solid. But they've put up a really good record this year against some decent teams. So I haven't seen them. We don't have any mutual opponents, so I can't really gauge them. But the people they've been playing, they've been hammering. And so it's going to be hard to tell with Pitkin. Luckily, we don't have to deal with Pitkin, but we will have to deal with Weston more than likely. It will be a miracle if somebody beats Weston out because they put up their offense is prolific.
Well, there's a team, this is the 2 seed, Welsh is the 2 seed.
Okay.
And that's who I predict that is going to be difficult. And so the way that it is us and Oak Grove are in the same side of the bracket. So we would have Oak Grove in the semifinals, and then Welsh in the finals. If it all worked that way. And so I think they're going to be difficult. They play with Lafayette Christian and a lot of those bigger Catholic type schools and stuff, and they were able to stay toe and toe with them. This year. So they've played some good competition.
Yeah. Other than that, I started lifting again this week for the first time in maybe like 8-9 months.
So we're calling this bulk season?
It's not really too bulk necessarily. I will naturally put on a little bit of size, but that's more gauged by how I eat than what I lift. The main reason is I'm just finally healthy enough again. I've been dealing with a bunch of injuries for a long time, and I just keep aggravating them because I don't rest. I say I don't rest. If I'm injured, I'll take a couple of weeks off to see if it, will correct itself. But if it doesn't, I just go back to training because I can't do nothing. That's tremendously bad for me. And so I heard a quote, and I shared it with Ryan and Josiah earlier this week. I heard a quote. Somebody was just talking about some different things, and he said something that was so intriguing, and I loved it. But the guy said, "Man, I'm so tired of perfect being the enemy of good." And I took a second and really pondered what he was saying. And man, what an intense quote and very, very deep. Because what he's saying is, people try so hard to do everything perfectly that good becomes bad. And they won't even do something good because it's not perfect. And so that's kind of like, my mindset on, like, is it ideal to train while I'm injured? No, it's not perfect, but it's better than what I would be doing, which is nothing. And so I will take good happily over perfect. Just do something. And so
you might not be able to do everything that you want to do, but at the same time, don't just do nothing. We see people do that all the time.
I read on the internet that if you don't train at least 3 times a week, that you don't get maximum results. So all I have time for is 2 times a week, so I might as well not even go. It's like, that's really stupid. It's really stupid.
Yeah, where I'm at in my job, I can't, meal prep and do all that every day, so I might as well just eat McDonald's every day.
No, really dumb. It's like, well, I can't meal prep all 3 meals, so why do it at all? It's like, brother, some progress is progress still.
Yes.
And so, yeah, cut yourself some slack. I guess that would be my advice on that. Cut yourself some slack, man. Just get better. Get a little better. Incrementally better is still better, and it compounds over time. And so you make 0.01% of progress every day. In 10 years, that's a substantial improvement.
Yeah.
And so
It's a big deal. We're doing a weight loss challenge right now. It's not something I really want to do, but I did it to help some other people. Not trying to win it. They just needed my $20, right? And so doing a weight loss challenge, and they're doing it by percentages, so how much weight each person loses.
I'm glad they're doing that, by the way.
Yeah,
it's the way to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple young guys that really needed this challenge. They needed something to motivate them. If you're ever trying to motivate young people, one thing that works a lot real well is money, right?
That's true.
Sonic cards, gas cards, money, and so here's these two teenage boys that just needed some motivation. So we put together this weight loss challenge, and one of them's lost like 8% or over 8% of his body weight.
That's incredible.
And then the brother has lost like 7% of his body weight, and that's unbelievable, and so that's the reason why I'm in it. But at the same time, I am losing some, and even losing a little feels good because I'm able to keep my strength. I'm keeping everything that I'm doing, and at the same time, I'm not hurting my workouts at all. At the same time, losing a little extra fat and stuff. So those things are good. So just because I can't win the competition, I'm not going to lose 8%. I don't want to lose 8% of my weight right now. Just because I'm not going to win the competition doesn't mean that I'm not getting a benefit.
That's right.
I've lost almost 3%. Hey, that's really good. So this all or nothing deal is kind of difficult. Sometimes I understand being all in, but you don't have to be all in or all out of the ultimate goal. We can find other goals to be able to help with.
Yeah, and I guess just like set yourself up for when that good moment does arrive. There may be a time in your life. We talked a little bit this morning about setbacks in your life actually being utilized as setups to set you forward, and it's like not everything's optimal always. As a matter of fact, most of the time things are not optimal, but there may be a day where it becomes optimal. So do you want to start from scratch when you finally get to that optimal thing? You know what I mean? Like, do you want to be at your worst possible condition when the optimal time arrives? Or do you want to make some small incremental progress so that when you because optimal doesn't last forever either.
Yeah.
So when you have that window, it'd be better if you were further along so you can use those optimal conditions to push you further along. And so just
like on this weight challenge, there were some people, I'm not going to say their names, but there were some people that just ate all they could eat for 2 or 3 days.
Got as heavy as
they can so that way they could lose more. And so they've lost more percentage than other people, and they're still not even at their regular weight.
Yeah. Oh, that's
wild. It's like, man, you hadn't done nothing.
Hilarious.
Now the two young men, they're knocking it apart. They did not do that.
Yeah.
But some other people, did, and it just showed that they weren't serious about it. So now they hadn't really been able to get it back.
Yeah.
They're almost at ground zero right now.
Yeah. High sodium, high water. That would have done it. You didn't have to eat all that. Man, that's funny though.
Hey, another thing is it's Resurrection Week.
It is.
Right? And so in the Christian world, this is a really big deal.
Yeah. We at church yesterday, we had asked it was yesterday. We had asked Aria, it's like, what did y'all talk about this week? She said, well, we talked about Holy Week. And Courtney was like, well, what's Holy Week? She said, it's Holy Week. You know what I mean? And so it's like a what is a woman type situation started coming. It's like, hey, this is a circular definition. Like, we want you to tell us what comprises Holy Week. And then she was able to, but for a second there I was like, oh boy, we got a problem. And so, but yeah, it's the talk of the town. It's the talk of the town, and as it should be.
Yeah.
Teaching last night, the youth, we kind of played a little trivia game back and forth, had the guys versus the girls, just asking some really simple questions. And when I got into the core of the questions, there was a couple of kids up who aren't necessarily regulars. They come, they're not there all the time, and I haven't got to spend as much one-on-one time with these two students. And I asked them a simple question, and it was worded a little more complex, but the question was simple, and it was, by what standard in the new covenant are we saved? And they were completely perplexed by it, and so I took the rest of the time, shut the game off, and I took the rest of the time to explain to them how, like, all of these great messages we hear in our life are useless if we don't understand this.
Amen.
And I even talked to him some about, like, preaching and things like that. Like, there's such a temptation as a preacher. We talked about Jehoshaphat, what was that, a week or two ago?
Right.
That's way more fun to preach about because not everybody knows the story. So everybody's a little interested. It's a little more engaging because it's kind of not new, but it's, it's not common. But if I was like, all right, everybody, open your Bibles to, John 3:16, everybody be like, oh, okay. Here we go. I know this message already, and so it's harder to get engaged. And what I was just explaining to him is, like, you listen to a lot of messages from a lot of preachers at a lot of different places that are really exciting and engaging. But if you've missed this, you've missed everything. Yeah. And so it's all about what he did. And understanding why he did it matters. Not just that he did it, but why he did it. It matters. It does matter. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, as long as you believe, you don't have to be able to answer all the questions. And it's like, I understand what they're saying, and I understand the heart behind what they're saying. Knowledge is not what saves you. But it's very important to understand why he did what he did.
Yeah.
You need to know. You need to know. You cannot fully appreciate it if you don't understand
the why.
The why. You know what I mean? Like, if a guy comes by, I would never be in the ocean because I'm not stupid. But let's say I was stupid and I was in the ocean, and a guy comes by on a paddleboard, and he grabs me. I'm just kind of treading water out there, and he comes and he grabs me and puts me on his paddleboard. And I'm like, who's this guy? Why is he touching me? You know what I mean? He puts me on his paddleboard and he starts, headed back towards the shore. And I'm like, hey man, let me be. But he won't let me go. And we go all the way back to the shore. And then he just leaves. I'd be very confused as to why he did what he did. I was like, thanks, I guess. I don't know. But now, if there was a situation where I was surrounded by sharks, and then this man comes out there at the risk of himself to come out there and get me out of that situation, well, now I can fully appreciate what he did because I understand it. It wasn't the knowledge that saved me; it was still what the guy did. Yeah. But the knowledge of it did make me appreciate it more. And so, having knowledge of what Jesus did and understanding the depths of it as much as we can grasp, I would rank up there with one of the most important things you can do.
It really is. And just like with anything, we teach our students at Fresh Start, and our clients and stuff, it's not just about having the head knowledge, it's about having it here. Well, if you have it here, then you need, the next step is to be able to communicate it. Because if all you can do is have it for yourself, but you can't verbalize it, you can't communicate it, then you can't give it to anybody else. So now it's become very selfish.
That's right.
And so now your faith has become very selfish. And it isn't because you want it to be, and it isn't because you're selfish. It's because you don't know how to communicate it in a way that will help anybody else. So I commend you on asking the questions, letting them verbalize things, because there were some questions that I should have been asked as a teenager that I wasn't asked. When people said, hey, do you love God? I said, yes. Who doesn't love God? But nobody says why.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the question you asked, all right, so why do you love God? Well, because this is what he did we got to know, and so I think those things are very, very good.
Yeah, I agree. So, quick get to know you segment question. By the way, just for the record, because Clay yelled at me earlier, these are getting very difficult to come up with.
Somebody needs to give them to us.
We've been doing this for a while, but and here's the deal: people haven't seen every episode,
right?
And so a lot of times when people pose a question, like it takes 6 or 7 questions before they get one that we haven't talked about.
And I'm
already.
fine with that.
You
I
know,
don't
it's just
mind
very-
them being wrong.
Yeah.
I'm used to people being wrong around me a lot. But I just like them to have the input, you know, so I don't care if you're wrong or not.
Yeah, and so they're getting difficult. And so today's question, you know, I reached a little deeper into the bag, and my question is, has there ever been like a viral video or like a viral clip, YouTube video, something like that you just like really, really enjoyed and like showed a lot of people, just something that you liked a lot?
So this actually just come up at the house this week, and here's why.
Praise God.
Because Robert Wallace showed me one of the most hilarious videos that he thought sounded like me and you, especially you.
That's
And,
the video
that's
you're
the
going
video.
with?
No, I'm not going with that. I'm
I
not
was
going with
about
that.
to say.
No, I'm not going with that. But he shows us this cat video where basically they're saying, if this happened, then why did this happen? And
Yeah, one of the cats was really smart,
that's
and
right.
the other one
and
just
then
listened.
the other one's like, yeah.
You
So-
decide which of us was which cat.
So anyhow, it reminded us a lot of Andrew on the
Smart
smart
one.
side. And so, but anyhow, with that, a bunch of useless information. But with that being said, it was hilarious, and I was showing it to my family at the house. And Becky said she was glad I don't have TikTok because I wouldn't ever get anything done. Because I really enjoy things like that, but I never watch things like that.
Sure.
And the reason is because I don't know what is going to happen. And if I don't know what's going to happen, then I won't watch it because then I don't know if it's good for me or not. I'm real concerned with what goes in my eye gates and my ear gates, and very concerned about it. And so if I don't know that it's going to be okay for me, then I won't watch it. But then once I've watched it, it's like the excitement's over, you know. So it's like if I know what's going to happen good enough to know that I can watch this, then I know what's going to happen and it's not fun anymore, you know. So I just find myself not doing it. But if a good friend that knows my values and cores and everything says, hey, watch this, I'll watch it because I know they've approved that part, right?
Sure.
So I don't watch a lot of it. And that's the reason why I don't have TikTok, anything like that. It isn't that some of it isn't funny. It's that at what expense? Because there's a lot of things on there that's just things that I'm just not cool with. You know, it's just the way I am. So I don't watch a lot of viral videos. But the one with the guy in the wheelchair with the fireworks going off,
yeah.
back him up Terry,
Yeah,
that is funny.
yeah.
Every single time I watch it.
That is a
I mean,
hilarious
every
video. Yeah.
single time I
Yeah.
watch it, it is funny. And if you hadn't seen it, Google it, back 'em up, Terry. I'm sure y'all have all seen that. It is hilarious. But here is the story that I'm not supposed to tell.
Oh boy.
And my kids are shutting it down right now, I can tell you. They're going to shut this episode down right now. And here's why. But it's
All
already
three of them?
recorded. Yeah, all three. No, Cooper wouldn't. He didn't have Facebook.
Yeah.
But the girls and the Cooper's like, oh my. But anyhow, so when that video came out, the video is very funny. This is why the video sticks out in my mind. So the video came out, and everybody, you know, it was, you know, a phenomenon or whatever. Everybody's watching. It went viral, okay? So my kids take it to their papa to watch this video because he owns a fireworks stand and he's had fireworks forever. Now he's not with us anymore, and but they take this video. You know, they're young, you know, 11, 12 years old, and they take this video to their papa and say, "Hey, we want you to watch this. This is like the funniest thing out there." And so he watches this video of this man in a wheelchair with the fireworks, and he's watching, and they think it's hilarious, and he can't figure out why it's hilarious. Now, one complication there is he's blind, you know, so their papa's blind, and so he's trying to watch this video, and you know, which he listens to the same.
Hold on. How blind?
Becky's daddy's 100% blind. Yeah. Now he's got eyesight now. He's in heaven, but before, no, he's 100% blind. So
they showed him a video.
show him a video where he can listen to the sound.
This is Annalise.
Annalise and Elena. Yeah. So
The two smartest kids I know.
So they showed
Showed
him
a
this
blind
video,
man a video.
and he can't understand why it's funny. So then they try to explain it to him that, hey, there is a black man in this wheelchair, and the fireworks are blowing up, and he can't get out of the way.
There's no good way to explain
and the
that.
guy is yelling, "Back him up, Terry!" Right? And so, or put it in reverse, Terry, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to explain it to him, and all of a sudden, their papa goes, "Oh, I get it now. It's funny because he's black."
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
So that has been the running joke around our house
Oh my
for
goodness.
the last 8 or 10 years.
That is
It's funny because he's black.
that is
And
wild.
it is hilarious. And so that is the running joke. So there's my viral video story. And my kids are never going to watch Jesus
that is
Cartel ever
wildly
again.
irresponsible. I've never been more disappointed in Annalise and Elena than I am at this moment for condoning that. I've got a lot of feelings, a lot of things I'm having to deal with and process internally right now.
Well, if you need me to, I can do the rest of the show by myself.
You may have to. You may have to. So there's a video that I don't know. It may be unfair to say, but I would venture to guess that it made me laugh harder than any video that I've ever seen. And it is a video of it's like a little skit with Jesus in it, but it's set in modern days. And so you see Jesus, and he walks up to a public pool, and he's like, "Oh man, it's nice to finally be able to relax for a while." And there's a bunch of Roman soldiers in the pool, like in like tubes and rafts and stuff like that, and they start whispering like, "Oh, watch this, watch this, watch this." And then Jesus stands at the side of the pool and he goes, "Cannonball!" And he jumps in back first and just slams flat on the surface of the water because he can't sink, and just bust it on the water, and everybody starts laughing.
I have not seen
and
that.
man, the first time I saw it, because I didn't know what to expect, and so it really really
got you,
caught me
huh?
off guard. And I think the thing that made it so funny was how hard he hit.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like they however they did that scene, they did it excellent.
That's
because
good
it looks like he just jumped onto concrete.
That's funny.
And it was
So now
very
I have
good.
a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, question. Do you think that if Jesus jumped in the water, that he wouldn't go under?
Yeah, I think it'd be up to him.
Yeah.
I think he
You
could
think he
decide to if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when he swam,
Yeah.
I don't think it was all like the Dead Sea where you just
Yeah.
float.
I mean, like, what happens when he tries to drink water? Can he not?
Right.
Like,
That's
yeah.
right.
And no, I think it was a choice. I think
Yeah,
it was a choice.
we've been studying the human side of Jesus for the last week.
Mm.
I think that he can do a cannonball. But
Sure.
I think that video was probably very funny
Oh,
too.
it's hysterical.
Yeah.
Absolutely hysterical. Just the prospect that maybe he couldn't. There's so many other things.
Or wouldn't.
That, what if every time he tried to drink water, it turned to wine?
Right.
Now you got a whole nother.
Or every time he tried to eat a fish, there was enough to feed 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
He's like, oh, I can't break this fish.
Yeah,
I got to
yeah.
eat it whole. Because if I break it, here it goes.
We got a problem.
Yeah. We got enough to feed Fresh Start.
So last week's episode, I had kind of opened up about some things that were difficult for me, and some areas that I kind of struggle in, and some ways that I'm trying to grow and challenge myself, knowing that even though that they are difficult, that we're not just okay with those things being difficult forever, that we still want to move forward and grow past and grow beyond those things. Really good response from a lot of people. Very different responses than we normally get about an episode. I think a lot of people appreciated that we kind of pivoted that direction because we don't a lot, not that way. And so I think that there were people that were definitely benefited from it, and a lot of people expressed appreciation for just being honest about the fact that there are some things that are difficult, because it can be easy to assume that everything in life is always peachy for us, but we deal with difficult circumstances all the time, and so most of the time I deal with them in stride without any issue. Sometimes that's not the case. Not everything is optimal, and so that's kind of what we talked about this morning, is when the situation's not optimal, how do you choose to respond? You can play the victim, and a lot of people want to. A lot of people like it.
Yeah.
Or you can be the victor in the situation. You can grow. You can get better. And so that was kind of last week, which was a deviation from a lot of what we've been doing. And I think that we're going to jump back this week kind of into ways to be successful. And do you know those off the top of your head?
I know the first one.
Yep. All right. Why don't you start us off?
I forgot the second one. You have the second one?
I do.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the first
You got
one.
the first one too.
Yeah, the first one is, I think, number 6, I think, in the list. And remember, we're just talking about a list that we found, things to do to reach your goals and be successful. And number 6, right in the middle, was to be honest with yourself. And, man, I love this one. This is something that we have talked about off and on during Jesus Cartel. This is something that we believe in. We believe in self-assessment. We believe in, analyzing ourselves, looking at things that we could do better. And so when this topic come up, I actually smiled real big because I really like this. Be honest with yourself. So many times in life we hear honesty is the best policy. We hear that, before you can do anything, you got to be honest, But before you can be honest with other people, you have to be honest with yourself. If you're not, honest with yourself about what's going on, where we are, what's going on, it's hard to move forward. So I really like this topic a lot, because when we're talking about reaching goals, and we're talking about getting better in life, and we're talking about succeeding and moving forward, if you can't give a honest self-assessment of where you are and your part that you're playing in this, then it makes it really difficult. So number one, you got to be able to talk about and analyze, where am I? I'm not here. I want to be there, but I'm not here. But we can't lie to ourselves and say that we're here when we're here. That you'll never be able to make it. I mean, if you're going to, if you're going to lose weight, you got to be honest with yourself about the weight that you currently are. You can't say that you're 30 pounds lighter than you really are and then make a goal from there. No, you got to make a goal from where you really are. So we have to be specific and realistic and correct about where we are, being honest with ourselves there. But then once we get into the goal and everything, then we have to be honest about what part are we playing here. Maybe you're not getting the results that you want to get. Well, what could you have done better to get those results? We can't just say we didn't get those results. We have to say, what did we do to not get those results, or what can we do better to get those results? I get tired of people saying, well, I tried my best. Well, most of the time you're a liar. You didn't try your best. Yeah. You gave an amount of effort that wasn't enough. But if it was your best, then the issue is your best wasn't good enough. So we're going to have to get our best better. I love it when I'm reading on Facebook and I see people that are in track events or something, or in weightlifting events. And we've been seeing a lot of that lately, spring sports, track and field, weightlifting, on the high school levels and stuff. And when they give their personal best or their personal record or whatever, I love that, because then they're competing against themselves.
Sure.
You got a kid that's in a B school or a 1A school, and they're winning district, but then you got a person that's in a 5A school, and she's not winning district because the competition's but she's getting her PR. Right. She's getting better against herself. And so I really like competing against yourself. I really like that, looking at that, looking at personal goals. But in order to move forward, we have to be honest with, number one, where we are, and number two, what can I do, or what did I do to not reach my goal, and what can I do better to reach my goal.
That's right. When Clay and I got in and we started setting everything up today, which is normally when it's revealed what we're going to discuss. So while we were setting up, we realized that the topic today was be honest with yourself, which is something that we talk about a lot. And so I told him, I was like, hey, look, man, this is going to be a short episode. I don't want to beat a dead horse. We talk about this all the time. So we're actually going to add a second point to this. But I do want to say a couple of things about being honest with yourself. And if you got more to say, please, by all means, say it. But a couple of things I want to really address is that, one, lying to yourself or to others, but especially to yourself, it creates a tangled web. And you are now, when you're being dishonest, you're now responsible to remember everything you said. And it is an impossible task. Eventually you'll forget something that you said somewhere, and that's where everything starts to unravel and the truth of the situation starts to get revealed, is because somewhere where you lied, you don't have the memory of what actually happened to fall back on. You have the memory of the very temporary situation, which doesn't earmark a place in your mind where you said something that didn't actually happen. And so when you're always honest, you don't ever have to remember what you said. You can just recall the event and you'll be fine because you were honest. But when you are dishonest, you can still recall the event the way that it happened, but you're going to have a hard time recalling the way that you said that it happened. And I have found, and I was discussing this with my wife not too long ago, she was in a situation where some people were being dishonest about something, and I said, well, the great thing about people who are being dishonest is the way that you defeat a dishonest person in the conversation is with their own words. You don't use what you think or what you feel about the situation, because if they're truly dishonest, they'll contradict themselves several times over, and that's exactly what happened. And so, we just kind of walked back through the situation together from the origin. It just took place over a decent span of time. And so we walked through the origin of it, and I was able to say, okay, well, hey, this person said this here in month 2 of the situation. Here in month 10 of the situation, they're saying this. Those two things can't be simultaneously true. And so, what happened? What happened, and leave them to answer that question. Don't decide for them. Ask them.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you said this here. Now you're saying this here. What changed? And if they can't actually produce a reason for change, that it was dishonesty that proved it. And so that's one of the things about people who are dishonest. Don't argue with them with your thoughts, because they'll continue. If they will lie originally, they will continue to lie. And so you got to let them argue with themselves. Let them try to defeat themselves. And they usually will. I say they usually will. They always will if you're just willing to go all the way down the rabbit hole. But I will say genuinely, it's normally not worth your time to go down that rabbit hole. The other thing is, when you are in a role in life, and we all have different roles that we play constantly. I've got a lot of hats that I wear. Each of those hats comes with it expectations and agreements, right? So, I work for you at Fresh Start. There's an expectation of work that you expect for me to be done, and there's an unwritten agreement. I say it's unwritten. It's actually probably written too. There's an unwritten or written agreement that should I not uphold my end of those expectations, that you have the right to withhold pay, terminate me from my position. There's agreement. I don't get to freely alter those as my convenience changes.
Gotcha.
I don't have the right to freely alter those as my convenience changes. And so let's say we make the agreement, and there's lots of stuff I'm not good at. Let me see if I can bring one that kind of works. Okay, empathy. Empathy is not a natural gifting of mine, but I do a lot of counseling here. A good deal of counseling. That's part of my job. When people come to talk to me, I sit down, I give you my time, I'll hear you out. Now, I can't decide, because it's part of my job here. It's part of the original agreement that I made, that I would help to counsel clients when they need counseling. I can't just decide on a whim on myself that, hey, since I'm not good at empathy, since it's not natural for me, and it is more taxing than anything else that I do, listen to those conversations. It's by far the most taxing thing I do is the one-on-one conversations that I have all the time, by the way. But it is for sure the most taxing thing that I do. I can't just decide that I don't have to do those anymore because it's not a part of my gifting. I can either get better at it and become, incremental growth. I don't have to be perfect at it tomorrow. I just need to grow incrementally. And it has gotten easier the longer that I've done it. But I don't have the right to decide it's not my responsibility anymore because it's not my natural gifting or my growth. There was an original agreement that was made, right? The other thing is we've hired several other employees over the years. I've also not been allowed to shove those responsibilities off on other people. As a matter of fact, when we hire new employees, usually the responsibilities I lose are the ones that I'm good at.
Right.
I've yet to lose the ones that I'm not good at. And so I have shelled out some of the responsibilities that were very easy for me to do. And I've kept the ones that were more difficult. And I didn't, just because they were there and there was someone else who may be more empathetic than me, maybe better at counseling, maybe not, I don't know. But they probably definitely had more of a natural bend towards being good at those things.
Yeah.
But just because they were there, I didn't get to say, well, I don't have to do this anymore because someone else is here that can do it. Because I still have an agreement in this role. This is part of that responsibility, and I've got to do it. It doesn't matter. And so that's the other thing about being honest with yourself is so many times, like, the lie that we tell ourselves is it's okay for me not to get better because this doesn't come naturally to me. And it's not true. Just because something doesn't come naturally to you doesn't give you a pass on not doing it. I'm not naturally affectionate. Does that mean that I get a pass on not being affectionate with my wife or children? No, and nobody would give me that pass. There's not a person in the world that would say, you know what, Andrew, you're not naturally affectionate. She needs to just deal. She needs to just deal with it, man. You don't like affection, she needs to just get over it. That's on her. That's a her problem. It's not a you problem, that's a her problem. And it's like, that's ignorant.
Right.
That's ignorant. But we want to carry that over into the workplace. We want to carry it over into all these other things. It's like, how stupid is that? How stupid is that you could... There's no way you actually believe what you're saying. I know that you're saying it, but I know that you don't believe it. And so, but it's such a common thing.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I deal with it probably on a weekly basis with different people. It's just, that's just not what I'm good at. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's your
what
responsibility.
makes it worse is a lot of times they just decide they're not good at it or whatever, but there is a pay that's associated with the overall package, and they're not willing to give that pay up.
Yeah.
They just want to do the parts they want to do and not do the parts they don't want to do.
Sure.
We see that with people with parenting and stuff. Hey, you signed up to be a parent for the whole thing.
Yeah.
You didn't just sign up to be a friend to a kid. You just signed up to be a parent. And so just because you don't like taking their phone, if that's what's best for them, then you have to take the phone.
Yeah.
Just because you don't like, discipline them in this way. Hey, you signed up for the whole thing. And so you can't just pick and choose in life. Another thing I'd like to make a point at on being honest with yourself before we move forward is we all have blind spots. We all have things that we just don't see at the time because we're focused on this area and stuff. And so if we're not self-assessing, looking at, man, I thought this would work. Why didn't it work? Mm-hmm. Now, if we just say, well, I thought it was going to work, but it didn't work, and we blame it on everybody else, that's an issue. And so we have to be honest with ourselves and look at, well, why didn't it work? Well, you start looking, and you're going to see some things about yourself that you didn't see. You're going to see some blind spots. And so to me, it's easier to surround yourself with like-minded people, and they can kind of point out those blind spots to you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's easier for other people to see them in your life. But when other people bring it to you, the worst thing you could do is act like they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because the next time they're not going to bring it to you. Mm-hmm. So if somebody brings you something and they have your best interest at heart and they love you, you better at least acknowledge that they said it, acknowledge that they could be right, and look into it and see before you just dismiss it. You know, but you can do that in your own life too. Look for your blind spots. Look at where you're missing it. But if all we're doing is just blaming it on other people, well, lately I've been seeing people that act like they're not failing.
Yeah.
When everybody knows they're failing, They're like, oh no, building's not on fire. We're not failing. Everything's cool. I don't know why you think it's not cool. I've been seeing a lot more of that lately. Yeah. Is that something you've seen to where you know that people aren't doing good and the results they're getting aren't good, but they act like it's great?
Yeah, I mean, you know what business we're in, man.
Right.
It's constant. It's constant, you know. I hate that the house has to be on fire for so many people to acknowledge that there's a problem, and it's just not. You know, that's not when you want to realize there's a problem. You know, the ideal situation would be that you realize it a lot earlier, but unfortunately, that's not the reality for most people and most times. And you know, when you'd mentioned that, you know, if you have a group of people surrounding you that you love and that you trust and that will pour into you and be honest with you and have always poured into you, loved you and been honest with you, and then you start to reject their counsel, well, then you said they may stop giving it. And man, I've been guilty of that in my life, and I say I've been guilty of it. I don't know if I'm guilty or not, honestly. I leave that to the viewers to decide. Like, because I've had people that I tried to give counsel to, and they just wouldn't receive it, and so I got a little bitter about it, you know, and that's probably wrong of me, you know. Maybe I should have continued to counsel anyways, even though it was continuously being rejected. Maybe that's my fault. Yeah, the more I say it, the more I think that I probably should have. But you know, but it's so frustrating to love people and try to lead them and try to help them, and them just blatantly, it's like, and it gets weird because at first it's like, well, I just, you know, I don't see it. And then it becomes like an accusation, like against me. It's like, I don't want you to be doing this. It's just what's happening. I'm trying to help you. You know, I don't want this to become a problem. But that's what ends up happening is over the long term, it becomes a problem. In the short term, you can get away with it because houses don't burn down instantly. You know, it takes some time, and there's a lot of things that can slow that fire down. And usually, if the people can't stop you from burning the house down, they'll just slow the fire. And so they'll redirect their energy because they recognize, like, hey, you're not going to stop this. Well, let me at least try to slow the fire. Well, you slowed the fire down for long enough, eventually enough time passes, and the building's lost. And now you got to convince them that the building's lost. And it's just a whole nother thing. It gets extremely difficult because everything ultimately was done in love. And it's not seen. It's certainly not appreciated. And if you could sit down and just go through it one at a time, and you can't. There's usually too many hurt feelings and too much involved. But if you could just sit down and let's go through each step one at a time. Let's take the names out of it. Sit down with me, sit across the table and say, hey, if I saw somebody doing this, would you want me to tell them or not tell them? You would say tell them. Yeah. If I saw somebody doing this and I told them and they rejected it, what would you want me to do next? And I guarantee you, if they'd switch chairs with me, they would have done everything that I did because they love me. And I believe that they would have wanted the best for me. As a matter of fact, in other situations in life, they've probably played that role for me. And I appreciate them for it. I didn't appreciate for them in the moment, but I appreciate it now. And but you rarely get those opportunities. You know, there's too much heightened emotion involved, too much different things. But I can tell you that's what makes it difficult, is that everybody feels like they're doing the right thing in the moment. And I've said this a bunch of times, maybe not recently, but a lot of times our ability to be right is the very thing that makes us wrong. And man, that's the difficulty of these kind of situations, is that you get focused in on the wrong thing. You get focused in on the wrong thing. You lose sight of what's important. You lose sight of who people are. You lose sight of the relationships and the reasonings, and you start to create false reasonings in your mind. It's like, well, they're saying this, because of that, or and it just, if you look at the longevity of it, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that now? You know, why would somebody who's been my friend, you know, I've had so many friends. One of my buddies called me, it's probably a year ago now. He heard a pretty wild thing about me. It wasn't true, but he heard it. And he called me. He's like, hey, look, brother, I don't even know how to start this conversation. I heard you did this. And, you know, and it's like, there's lots of ways I could have taken it. You know, it's like, dude, you've known me for so long. Why would you even bring this to me? You know, that would be a fair, you know, not right, but a fair, by the world standards, a fair response to what he said. And the accusation was like, dude, you know my character better than that. Why would you even bring this up? It's like, well, he brought it up because he loved me. And in case there was a chance this was happening or something he could do to prevent it, or help or mend or heal, he wanted to let me know that he was here, and you know, we'll walk through it, you know. But man, I had so many opportunities to take that so many different ways and run that into the ground. It could have ruined my relationship with this person, but he loved me enough to do something difficult. He loved me enough to have a hard conversation, and I wish they all went that way. They don't though.
Well, when you said that about, you know, giving some people, somebody advice and then they, you know, not take it or whatever, and, you know, you had to make whatever decision, you know, with me, I've had to make that call before, you know, especially in marriage counseling with people, to where they come in, marriage is not good, you tell them what they need to do, and they come back in the next week or two, and you're like, hey, how'd it go? Man, it went terrible. Well, did you do what I asked you to do? No, we didn't do that. But it still went terrible. And now we need you to tell us something else to do. And so you tell them again, and same thing. They come back. No, we didn't do it, but it still went bad. You know. Yeah. And those things are kind of fine. But then when you tell them, well, look, whatever you do, don't do this, because this would be bad. I know this is what you're thinking, but that would be terrible. So you haven't taken my advice on what I've told you to do. But now I need you to take my advice on what not to do.
Yeah.
And then they come back the next week and they're like, well, we hadn't done it yet, but that's where I'm leaning to. You know, and then the next week I've decided this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Well, then I've just broken it off.
Yeah.
Because now I can't help you. You can't hear me. I can't help you. And why? Because you're not being honest with yourself. This is where I'm at. This is where we got to be. You're not being honest with yourself. And so now I can't reach you at all.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've had to cut off some of those times. And here's why. Because that time slot is going to be filled with counseling. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take that time slot and go play golf in it.
Yeah.
That's a time slot that I have in my week penciled in to help people. Yeah. I'm going to help somebody. Yeah. I'm just going to help somebody that's going to listen.
Sure.
You know, somebody that's ready to be helped. The whosoever wills instead of the whosoever wants, you know. And I think that we need to really caution ourselves in life, because sometimes we're not approachable because how we handle criticism, or how we handle bad news, or how we handle some comments that may be a little negative in nature. And so because how we handle that, then people think we're not approachable and they quit approaching us. And then next thing you know, you're on the island all by yourself. That's a scary place to be. You know, this friend that called you that said that, he wanted to be there for you. And if he didn't, he wouldn't have called you. But how you initially handled that reaction, that question or accusation or whatever, really told him whether or not he really needed to stick by your side or not.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And so if you would have just folded and said, look, man, it's true.
Yeah.
I screwed up, man. Mm-hmm. I messed up. I didn't mean to. It doesn't matter what I mean to do. I did it. And this is what happened. That dude would have loved on you and hugged on you, and man, he would have come up with a way to make you a lot better than you was. But if you told him, how dare you even come at me with that at all? Yeah. You know, and you might tell him, you know, this little bit happened, but that didn't happen. Well, he's not even going to sympathize on the little bit.
Yeah.
You know, right. And then when somebody asks him later, man, did Andrew do this or not? His answer is going to be, and I hope he didn't.
Yeah.
But he's not going to know for sure because of how you reacted, how you handled it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And the other thing, we ran longer than I thought we would. Well, we went further in the first part, too. Be careful who you make the villain in your story. Because it's very hard to take back. You know, I've dealt with a lot of situations in my life that were very difficult, where things go sour with people that you love and that you care about, that I still love and care about, for the record. that doesn't go away. But I've become the villain in their story. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Because despite the fact that I genuinely feel wronged, and I do, they also feel wronged. The difference is I never made them the villain.
Right.
And, when people talk to me about those people, I still make comments like, hey, that's a good man. That's a good man. And those are the type of conversations that I have. And then, the things that get back to me are not so great. They're not so.
He's a good man.
It's not so nice. And it's like, I'm not bitter about them. But I mean, how do we move forward from there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, how do I approach someone who doesn't just see me as not a friend, but sees me as an enemy? Because, I don't feel that way about those things. I never have. I feel like, really, if I was just to be completely honest, I feel like 99% of those situations I've dealt with in my life have all been over somebody lost sight of something for a short period of time. And if they could just refocus their vision, then everything would be perfectly fine. And in the situations where they always were fine. And the situations where they weren't, those situations did not go well. I worked for a guy one time who, he was terrible. I don't mean as a person. I love him as a person. He just wasn't a good employer, but it was never his fault, and he would just hire and fire and hire and fire and fire and fire and fire and fire and fire, but it was never him. You know what I mean? It's like, at the end of the day, who was the ultimate decision maker? You know what I mean? Like, if all of these people need to be repeatedly fired, we might want to fire the guy who's hiring them, because apparently somebody's not real good at hiring. Well, he was the one doing all the hiring, and so, if we can't find a good employee, well, who's picking them?
It's kind of like the Jerry Jones deal. Right?
Yeah. And so, it was a situation like that. And I think at his heart, at his core, I think that he's a great man. I really do. I really think that there's a lot of love and generosity in his heart. But I just think that he's lost sight of some things. And in that lack of sight, he's made some really bad decisions, but he just keeps doubling down.
Yeah.
And so it gets hard to, what I've lost is my ability to defend him. I want to defend him, but he's taken away the ability to, because what started with, like, I'm not wrong about things that were genuinely questionable, he's had to double down so many times that now he's doubling down on things that are not questionable. Like
he's for sure wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to name any specifics, because I don't want to draw attention to who it is. There would be a couple of people who would know and that listen to this, and I don't. That's not my goal. And that situation's a few years old.
Right.
So I'm not trying to rehash all that. I'm just saying I was never his enemy.
Right.
I was never trying to be. Everything I ever did, even the standing up to him, was out of love for him and out of trying to help him succeed. He couldn't see that. And so instead of allowing me to help, he made me the villain in the story. And I have been that villain several times in life in different situations, and it just sucks because, man, I could be a heck of a villain.
Right.
I'm not trying to be a villain.
No.
You know what I mean?
And then when people know that you're not, then it's like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then it's confusing.
Yeah. And again, I make this comment a lot when we talk, because I'm not interested in anybody thinking I'm cool. It doesn't matter to me. Right? You don't have to like me. You don't have to think I'm cool. You can think I'm weak. It doesn't matter to me. People's opinions are really, really irrelevant. I wish that they weren't certain ways at times, but at the end of the day, I'm going to sleep just fine. But I would say this, again, not trying to sound cool. I'm just telling you, if I wanted to be a villain, I'd be a tough one to run up against. I'm not being a villain. The reason the situation that you're having is not that difficult for you is because I'm not being a villain. I have not tried to destroy you. I never tried to destroy. It's never my intention. I don't seek to. I want what you're doing to succeed, not be destroyed. If I was trying to be the villain, I'd go about it a totally different way. I'm not saying that sounds cool. I don't think it sounds cool. I despise people who are like that. I don't want to be a person who wants to see the world burn so that I could stand justified at the end of it. That sucks. I want everybody to win. I want the kingdom to grow. I want all people to come out of every situation better than they were. But it's hard for me to help if I'm the villain. It's hard to reconcile if I'm the villain.
Well, and that's something I just want to, talk about real quick as we get ready to close. But you talked about, be careful who you make the villain in your story and stuff, because, other people see that they're not really, then it's confusing, and a whole different reasons. Because at the core, you're just lying to yourself. You got to blame somebody. You're not willing to blame yourself. So you blame everybody else, or somebody else. Usually they try to find a specific person. But here's another way of looking at it that makes it difficult is because we're used to hanging out with good people. We hang out with Christians most of the time. So we don't hang out with the people that are like, you're dead to me. Our mind, you don't hear us say that. No matter what he does, I'm never going to like him again. We don't hang out with people like that. We don't hang out with people, well, he did my grandmama wrong, so he's dead to me. I'll never, no matter what. No, we hang out with people that want to forgive people. And they want to like people, and they want to love people. And so the reason why they can't is because that person is lying to themselves, lying to other people, and lying to you, and trying to put, something in between y'all, or make you the villain, or however you want to say it. And if they would just not do that, then the relationship would be 100% better.
Yeah.
They're not dead to you. They're not, I don't care what he does. No, if they would just do the right thing, then all this would go away. And so we just need to realize in life, man, don't draw so many lines in the sand. Don't try to make other people the villain. Don't try to act like you don't have any part to play in you not having success. And be open for reconciliation. Be open to listen. Be open to receive counsel. Man, all those things are good. Jesus himself said that my Father is the gardener, and he prunes my branches so that I could bear more fruit.
Yeah.
So that tells us right there that even Jesus himself had to be pruned. There was things that he had strengths, he had weaknesses, he had shortcomings, he had things he wasn't as good at, situations he didn't have, had to have, because he says there's branches that had to be cut off. And then there's other ones that had to be pruned. Why? To bear more fruit. And so guess what? We need to do the same thing. So be honest with yourself. Be open to receive counsel. Be open to listen to those that are worth listening to. Let other people help you look at your blind spots. And let's move forward in life. Yeah. And let's just don't blame our failure on somebody else. Yeah. And I would hate to know that I failed at something and I can't control it because it was somebody else's fault. I'm not saying that can't happen. But I'm going to try to find every way to not let that happen.
Yeah.
But some people are just so quick to accept defeat, blame it on somebody else, and not even look for a way around it.
I want it to be my fault because that means I can do something.
I can control it.
That means if I can just shift here, there, or yonder, I can maybe make this situation better. But if it's somebody else's fault, I can't. I'm helpless.
Right.
I'm helpless, and that's ultimately, if I was going to give one piece of advice for people going through difficult situations like this, it'd be this: leave the dialogue open. If it can't be discussed, you're probably the one that's wrong. Leave the dialogue open. Be willing to have the conversations, and don't when people are trying to help you, and people are trying to, even though it don't always feel good, because it doesn't. I've been the one in that chair many times. Probably will be again. Hopefully not, but probably. It don't feel good to be corrected. It doesn't. I don't like it. But at the end of the day, I can't shut down the conversation, and that's the temptation. It's I don't like the way this feels, so I'm just going to shut this whole situation down. It's man. Pruning, I don't think, is a fun experience. I don't know that it was ever intended to be. We talk about being refined by fire, as if that's some sort of lovely, pleasant experience. I don't believe that it is. I believe it's something that's we're talking heat and pressure and it's a lot to it. So,
Well, we can't all be right every single time about something. And you can't just be upset and shut down when you're not right. Just like you weren't right about this episode. You know, we were able to do a great episode in the right amount of time.
That's true.
That you did not predict that would happen.
That's true.
But yet you're not going to just take your ball and run off and not come back next week.
Yeah.
We hope that you come back next week to the Jesus Cartel.
Y'all be good.
Oh, we're so crazy.